In this lesson, you're going to learn how to create views. Now, essentially, views are just our queries that we've been writing, only saved. And that's just our select queries, not our update or delete. Let's go over to SSMS and look at our timesheets database. And instead of doing tables here, we're going to right click on views because there's no views here. Let's open it up. We're going to right click on views and say new view. Now, I came from a Microsoft Access background way back when. And if you've ever worked with Access, there's that query builder that I used to love because it was drag and drop. I could see things. I could understand what's happening. And it's still kind of here. It's still kind of around. And that's this view editor right now. Think of view as a query. So we have, here are the tables we can pull from. We can also pull from other views, but for now we're just going to do tables. So let's do the customers table and the locations table. So I hit Control. So I select the first one, I hold down Control, I select the second one and any others I want, and then let go of Control. So now I have two tables. And I hit Add. And then I hit Close. Now I could have kept adding if I wanted to. And if I want to add again, I right click on the space and say Add Table, and it pops this back up. But check this out. Let's move these out a little bit and expand them. Not only do we have the customer table and a list of the columns we have, and the locations table and a list of their columns, we also have this connection here. And it says customer ID is connected to ID. This is the primary key. And this is a infinity symbol, which says this is a one-to-many relationship. And how does it know that? We told it so when we created those relationships inside of our table designers. So that's just kind of neat. It knows that relationship already. And also look down below. This select statement is being built on the fly. Select nothings yet from DBO customers inner join DBO locations on dbo.customer.id equals dbo.locations.customer.id. This is the same as if we were to have written it, but the designer wrote it for us. So now we can say, let's get the company name and then the city and state of all of their locations. And that's it. Let's see what happens. So if I right click on this window again and say execute SQL or Control R, either one, down below we get a results window and it says Acme in Scranton, ABC in Washington, Acme in Du Bois. And that's kind of cool. And all I did was check these boxes next to the columns I wanted. But then we can go even further by saying, well, let's sort by company name. How do we do that? Well, there's a column here called sort type. Let's drop this down and see what happens. It says ascending or descending or unsorted. Let's say ascending. Then we have a sort order. Well, it says 1 right now because we only have 1, but we could also change this to a 2 or 3 if we had 2 or 3. Let's say the next thing we sort by is the city name. Actually, let's do state next. We're going to do state, and then we're going to do the city. Notice when I select them, since I did it in the order I actually wanted, it says 1 for company name, 2 for state, and 3 for city. And we can change that if you wanted to. Now, if we run this again, notice down here that ABC is first, and then Acme and Acme. And P comes before T, therefore PA is first in the list, T is second. And since there's only one PA, we don't sort Scranton really because it's only the one record for PA. So there's our SQL statement for this. Select top 100%. Now I didn't show you a percent before because that's not something that's a really big, widely used thing. Typically it's top 100. But in this case, if you put percent afterwards, you could say top 10%, top 15%. Instead of the number of rows, it's based upon the overall total rows, and then only a certain percentage of that. Now, because it's saying all the rows, it's saying top 100%. Essentially, you could take this right out because it does nothing. Top 100% is equivalent to saying all. But then it specifies here are the columns I want, and then here is the join that we've seen. And now here's the order by. Notice the order by is company name, and then state, and then city. So that's how it moved them around. So that's kind of cool. It actually built a statement for you. In fact, you can copy this and paste it into your query window, and you can modify it from there. So you can use this builder just to build a complex statement for you fairly easily. But wait, there's more. So if we say, you know what, this is great. We now have this lookup the way we want it. We can look up for all of our companies and see where their locations are and have them sorted. So if you say, that's it, we're done. Hit the save key and give it a name. So in this case, I might call it something descriptive, probably like locations per customer. Now, some people at the beginning put like a VW or something to indicate a view. I don't necessarily do that all the time, but it does allow you to distinguish between a view and a table, because tables typically don't have anything in front of them. So that's something you can think about. It's up to you if you want to do it or not. In this case, let's go ahead and say that we will, just so we have an indication that's a view. All right, so now we have this message here. It says, warning, the order by clause is used only to determine the rows that are returned by the top clause. All right, and so don't worry about that because the top is top 100%. So we hit OK. Sometimes they get overeager to warn us about things that aren't really problems. So now if we refresh, we see we have a view. And that's cool. Now you also have system views here. Notice all these here. They're all built right in from Microsoft. And you could spend, as you can see, quite a bit of time looking at all the different things they provide. And there's some really cool stuff in here. But it's definitely outside the scope of this video series. I could spend days talking about this stuff in there. But what does this allow us to do? Well, now if we're in a new query window, instead of saying, oh, I need customers and locations, and saying select star from customers, inner join, all the rest, you can say select star from dbo.vw locations per customer. I hit F5 and check that out. There is my view. Now I can go even further, and if I put IDs in this view, I could link that to other areas as well. It acts like this is a table, even though it's not. So you can actually think of it as if it's a virtual table. So views can be pretty powerful when you're always writing the same SQL statements to get started. So you're always combining customers and their locations before you then move on to the quote-unquote real work of whatever query you want to write. And so a view can step in that place by saying, okay, here's the join, and here's the results that you're normally wanting. now go from here. So that's pretty cool on views. The editor is really cool. Let's do a new view real quick, and we'll do one for the work done. Now I double clicked here and that shows up. And I know I have employees that I have to get. I have to get locations. I have to get jobs. And I have to get customers. I hit close. And if I can do this with the space I'm provided, I'm not sure if I can or not because there's a lot of stuff going on here. Let's see if I can't get this to all show. See, because all that linking, the system knows how everything connects, and I just have to choose the fields I want now. So all of this complex joinery, which I taught you how to do by hand, you could now do by copying this and then coming over to a new query window and just pasting it in. All right? Or you don't even have to do that. You can create this complex view and then just use it as if it's a table. So for example, this is work done. So I'm going to say, first of all, employee. I want to know who did the work. So let's go first name, last name, and let's include email address, pay rate, and bill rate. So the work that's done starts by this person, and then for which company, do company name, and we'll include email address. Now it's going to make for something interesting because now we have two email addresses. The one from the employees table and the one from the customers table. Notice we can't have two columns with the same name, so we have this alias. Remember I said that whenever you have a field and you say as and then something else, like right here, right here, email address as expression1. Okay, that's the alias. The cool thing is you can just change this to be customer email. And then up here, you should probably change this to be employee email, just so you don't assume. All right, so now we have information about the customer. Now let's look at the city and state they did the work in, and for which job name. And now we can say hours worked and the description and the date performed. That whole complex thing, we just did it by checking some boxes. And if I run that, notice down here, first name, last name, employee email address, pay rate, bill rate, company name, customer email, city, state, job name, hours worked, and description and date performed. All those columns, all that work, and I did it just by clicking a few boxes. Now if I want to include this, what I could also do is check off all these other boxes, like for the IDs. That way I could reference them later. But for now we could just say that this is the VW and call it something like work done pretty. And if we refresh over here, now whenever we are in our query window, let's do a Control-Shift-R to refresh. We can do select star from DBO dot work done pretty. If we run that, there we go. And that, believe it or not, is all there is to views. Views are just saved select statements. But the editor is so much more powerful because it allows us to do this select and play around with checking the boxes and all the rest. It just makes it so much easier to build a query quickly. Also note over here, filter, that's the where clause. So, for example, If I want to say where employee ID is greater than 5, notice down here, employee ID greater than 5, and job ID is greater than 2. There's your and clause. But then notice the ors as well. I could say or equals 0. So now employee ID is greater than 5 and job ID is greater than 2, or job ID equals 0. And so you can play around with all that kind of stuff. The editor might not get it perfect, but for really complex stuff, but really you should be doing complex stuff in this window, or starting it here and then taking it to this window and finishing it up. So the editor is really powerful. You can do a lot of fun stuff. And especially when you're first getting started, that's the great place to go to have those boundaries to make sure that you can't really mess stuff up too badly in there. So you may hear people complain or say, oh, you shouldn't ever use an editor or GUI. You should always use the scripting language. And I really disagree with that. That's one of those elitist viewpoints that I encourage you not to have, and I encourage you not to listen to people who have that elitist viewpoint. Because the reality is everyone starts somewhere, and the easier it is to start, the more likely it is that you will continue, and the more likely it is you will continue with success. So definitely use those tools. Don't shy away from them because the experts don't use them. Start where you need to start and go from there. If you can do everything through scripting, that's great. You're better than I am. I still Google things or have my cheat sheet that I look at to make sure I know what I'm doing in the scripting window. So that's just my encouragement to you. Definitely check out views. I don't use them a ton just because I do everything through store procedures, which we're going to look at next. But if you find that views work best for you, or if you have certain circumstances where you just want to have that saved query, definitely feel free to use them. They're not a bad thing. They're a great thing. So go ahead and check them out and try them out. All right. And don't forget to do the homework.